good to go? We're just waiting for your signal. Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. We begin with the name of God. We ask Him for His help, for His blessings, and for His protection. We praise Him, for He's the Lord of everything in existence, and we ask Him to bless the Messenger Muhammad, to elevate his mention and rank, and to shower him with protection and grace along with his family and his righteous followers to the last day. Welcome to another session of prophetic stories, illustrations of life, where we're covering certain aspects of the Prophet's life and trying to extract some lessons that we can apply in our daily lives. Today we're going to speak about one of the beloved disciples of the Prophet ﷺ by the name of Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And we're going to have a little bit of background on Mu'adh, of some of his time with the Prophet ﷺ. The very first time he meets him was in an event called Bay'atul Aqaba. And Bay'atul Aqaba is this event that takes place about a year or so before the migration. So we're talking about 10 plus years after the ministry of the Prophet begins in Mecca. He would meet people in the pilgrimage season, wherever people would come from different tribes and different locations all over Arabia, and he would present to them the message. And Mu'adh was one of those young men who came from Medina, who came from the city called Yathrib, and he gave his covenant and he made a deal with the Prophet, and that's what the Bay'ah of Aqaba was. They basically told him, it happened on two occasions. There was Bay'ah al-Ula and then Bay'atul Aqaba al-Thaniya. And this is where they finally told the Prophet, we are going to give you safe haven, we're going to give you refuge, you're able to preach your message, and we will protect you like we protect our own families. So this was a young man. In fact, they describe him as a young man who hasn't grown facial hair yet. So this tells you how young he was. So an adolescent individual, and he kept the company of the Prophet ﷺ and gained a lot of knowledge from him. He was extremely intelligent and also very pure in spirit, and this is a very good combination to try to benefit from scripture and from sacred knowledge. He was a noble person and he was extremely generous. He was respectful and he was kind and gentle. He was one of the most beautiful people in appearance, and he had the most beautiful of character traits. He was very generous with his wealth, and he was one of the most knowledgeable of the Muslim community. Matter of fact, the Prophet speaks about him, and he says that he is the most knowledgeable of all of the community of Muslims. In fact, he will be a stone's throw ahead of all the scholars and the jurists which will come later on in Islamic history. So he kept the company of the Prophet for the last 10 years of his life, which is after he migrated to the city of Yathrib, which later on becomes known as Medina. He memorizes the Quran, and he has this deep, profound knowledge, and this is the meaning of fiqh. Fiqh is understanding. So he becomes one of those fuqaha of the Sahaba. Now, we have many people who kept the company of the Prophet, but not all of them were scholars, and this is something important to note. Many people think that just because they were with him and kept his company, they became experts in the law. That's not necessarily the case. There was specific individuals who were experts in the law and who were learned, and other people just kept the company of the Messenger, and they knew the basics. They knew how to practice and how to have a proper relationship with their Lord, but they did not necessarily become scholars of the law. He is known as أعلم الأمة بالحلال والحرام, the most knowledgeable of all of the Muslim community in matters pertaining to the things that are lawful and the things that are prohibited. And the Prophet gave him special care and concern, and this is something important to note as well. Sometimes a teacher will give certain people more time. Although with the Prophet and the people that were around him, every single individual thought he was the most favorite person to the Prophet. So this is a very key tool of leadership, where you let all your people know that they have a special status with you. But now, outsider looking into the story, you realize that Mu'adh specifically had a specific place in the Prophet's heart, but also a specific role to play. So whenever you have a specific role, you're going to be given special attention. So the Prophet here is going to give him a lot of the knowledge, because he's hoping that this individual will live on to carry on this knowledge and to basically be an inheritor of the prophets. Now, one of these events where you can see the love that the Prophet had for him and how close he kept him. So again, love entails that you keep the person close to you. I know they say this idiom that distance makes the hearts grow fonder in relationships. That's sometimes you give people their space in order for them to realize your value. But at the same time, part of love is that you keep the person close to you and you give them specific time that is especially for them, where no one else is sharing you with them. So here he's riding with the Prophet on the mode of transport, and the Prophet, again, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a part of his humility and humbleness was that he would ride not the way kings and princes would ride. He would ride on a donkey, he would ride on a mule, and only certain times during journeys he would ride on a camel. He didn't ride on horseback that much, although at that time, and of course Arabia is famous for horses, Arabian horses. The Prophet was not necessarily into showcasing who he was, although he has the greatest status with the Lord of the universe. But here he's riding on a donkey, and in fact the donkey of the Prophet has a name. His name is Ufayr. And what's interesting is this donkey appears in more than one location. One time the Prophet was riding his donkey, and I said monkey, right? So I have a story of why these words are connected. There was a poem that we were sent, and it says this was a poem that the students in Azhar University who are studying Islam, so they're studying Islam in the Arabic language, so they require them to take an English course. So in the English course, they have these vocabulary words in English that they have to learn. So they are smart. So typically students of Islam, what they do is they change the subject from prose to poetry. من النثر إلى الشعر. They make it into a qasida, they make it into a manzuma in order for it to be memorized. So these guys took all these English words and made them into an Arabic poem. So part of it, one of the lines, he says, وَالْقِرْدُ monkey, وَالْحِمَارُ donkey. So he says a monkey in Arabic, he uses the word qird, he says it's called monkey in English, and the donkey, the himar, is called donkey in English. And this is why it's stuck, because my daughters, I made a mistake and I made them listen to it. So now every time they look at me, they're like, can you play the donkey song? I'm like, what's the donkey song? That song. Anyway, so that's why I just said that. But so one time the Prophet actually passes by a group of people in Medina, and one of them was Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, who was the leader of the community known as the hypocrites in Medina. And he basically started cursing the Prophet and disrespecting him. He says, you bring your dirty animal here, it stinks. Your donkey stinks. But of course, this did not change the Prophet's humble status. He didn't think, you know what, because I'm going to go meet rich people, I'm going to change my vehicle or my mode of transport. This is what was available to me. I'm not going to utilize resources of the community to go and buy this fancy horse so I can showcase myself in front of these people. So this donkey is called Ufayr. So on donkeys, when you would ride them, they don't necessarily have a saddle. Again, because saddles are more expensive, and also saddles are put on horses. So they had some type of fabric, but it was harsh fabric. And the Prophet was sitting in the front, and Mu'adh bin Jabal was sitting behind him. So again, this is the close proximity of Mu'adh in this particular occasion. And basically, the only thing that's separating them is this small part of the saddle. So while they were traveling, while they were on the road, the Prophet ﷺ calls him in a way where you would think he's calling someone who's at a distance. He shouts his name and he says, Ya Mu'adh. He calls him by his first name. And they say part of you attaining the affection of people is using their names, calling them by their names. And they mention this about meeting people. When you first meet people, try to repeat the name of the person you just met. And this way they think that you are giving them importance. You remembered their name, they're significant in your life. So he says, Labbayka ya Rasulallah wa sa'dayk, which is an expression in Arabic that means I am responding to your call. This is a similar expression to what people who go to the pilgrimage say, Labbayk Allahumma labbayk, which is I am responding to your call, my Lord, one time after another. And this is what call is a pilgrim responding to? The call that Ibrahim made long ago. Allah commanded him, he says, وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ, invite people to visit this house. يَأْتُوكَ رِجَالًا وَعَلَى كُلِّ ضَامِرٍ, they come to you on foot and they come to you on every type of mode of transport. Again, this is interesting with translation. Rijalan here, if people don't know Arabic, or even Arabs, they'll think they come to you as men. In fact, one time I heard a lecture and the guy says, they come to you as men. But rijalan here is the plural of rajil, not the plural of rajul. Rajul is man, rijal would be men. This is rijalan, the plural of rajil, and rajil is the person who's walking on foot. He's not walking on a mode of transport. Again, another side tangent on Arabic, considering I teach Arabic in the daytime, so I got to review my information in the nighttime as well. After he responds and he says, Labbayka wa sa'dayk, the Prophet now, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is silent for a moment. Then he calls him back again, Ya Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And he calls him by his first name, Mu'adh, the son of Jabal. That's his full name. And he responds again, Labbayka ya Rasulallahi wa sa'dayk, I respond to your call, O Messenger of God. Then the response is another moment of silence. Then he calls him again and he says, Ya Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And he says, Labbayka ya Rasulallah wa sa'dayk. So now he's being called 3 times. He doesn't lose patience. He doesn't become frustrated. I mean, I just want us to imagine this. You're in the car. You got one of your family members with you. Let's say a wife or a son or a daughter or a cousin or a friend. And you say, hey, Mike. And they say, yes. What do you want? Right? And you stay silent. A couple of minutes pass. Mike. Person's like, yes. How can I help you? You remain silent. You say, hey, Mike. What is the response of an individual? Extreme frustration, right? Says, I don't want to hear what you have to say. That's it. You got me excited the first time around. But here, when the Prophet ﷺ is speaking to them, they realize the value of this conversation. So they said, you know what? I am so interested in hearing. And this is also, they say, a method of getting people excited, getting them into some type of suspense. So then the Messenger ﷺ, may God protect him and shower him with grace, he says, أَتَدْرِي مَا حَقُّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعِبَادِ. Do you know what God's exclusive right on his servants is? So Mu'adh responds like the student who is humble and who is aware of their limitations. So the scholars say half of all knowledge is for you to respond with the statement, I don't know. نِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ لَا أَدْرِي. Now, most people now, you give them any type of situation, they're going to give you a response. In fact, people are encouraged to just voice their opinion, whether they know something on the topic or they don't. Just keep on talking. That is not the proper approach of a believer. If you don't know something, then know your limitations and say, I don't know. Mu'adh says, God and his messenger know best. So the Messenger ﷺ responds to him and he says, إِنَّ حَقَّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعِبَادِ أَنْ يَعْبُدُوهُ وَلَا يُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. He says, surely the right of God on his servants is for them to get to recognize God and to serve him by obeying him alone without any partners. Then they kept on traveling. So there was a pause in the conversation. It says, ثُمَّ سَارَ سَاعَةً. Now when you read this and you get some of the translations, it says, Then they traveled for about an hour. Sa'ah in Arabic does not mean an hour. It's not made out of 60 minutes. It just means a period of time. Now it could be 60 minutes, but it could be just a period of time. Then he says, Ya Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He calls him out again. So what he did, take a pause, let that simmer. Let that register in your intellect. I want you to record that and to think it over. Then he says, I respond to your call, O Messenger of God, again. He says, أَتَدْرِي مَا حَقُّ الْعِبَادِ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِذَا فَعَلُوا ذَلِكَ. Do you know what the right of the servants of God is upon God if they are to fulfill His right? قَالَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَعْلَمُ. Again, he says, God and His Messenger know best. He didn't decide to say, well, you know what? I've been with you for so long. I know all this knowledge. Let me just try to take a guess. Now, sometimes the teacher wants you to guess. So it really depends on the situation. Not every time, I mean, it's interesting. I'm a teacher, and then I ask my students a question. I will not accept for them to write in the exam paper, Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam. God and His Messenger know best. Of course they know best. But right now is exam time. I expect an answer from you, right? So this is not something to be given at every moment. You ask somebody, what's your name? He's like, Allahu a'lam. Yes, I know God knows best what your name is, but I'm trying to get to know you. So there is an appropriate answer in response to every situation. Some people also, they have this habit of saying, inshallah, after their answer. What's your name, brother? Ahmad, inshallah. Yeah, Allah already willed this. You can't say, my name is Ahmad, God willing. Like, it already happened. Past tense. They named you Ahmad, that's it. Just introduce yourself that way. Are you married? Yes, inshallah. Do you want to get married in the future? What's going on? What's your, what is your marital status right now? Future marriage, currently married, ex-married, what is it exactly? So be precise in the way you respond. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam responds, فَإِنَّ حَقَّ الْعِبَادِ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِذَا فَعَلُوا ذَلِكَ. Surely the right of the servants, if they are to do and to give God His due right, أَلَّا يُعَذِّبَهُمْ, that He is not to punish them. وَيَغْفِرَ لَهُمْ, and He will forgive them. وَيُدْخِلَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ, and He will enter them into the garden of paradise. مَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ يَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صِدْقًا مِنْ قَلْبِهِ إِلَّا حَرَّمَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى النَّارِ. Surely there is not an individual who testifies that there is nothing worthy of worship except for the one true God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God, truthfully from the bottom of his heart, except that God will prohibit the fire from ever punishing this individual. قال يا رسول الله. So again, look at this student who is not selfish, because right now he just has a piece of information which is extremely valuable. He says, Ya Rasulullah, أَفَلَا أُبَشِّرُ بِهَا النَّاسِ. O Messenger of God, should I not go and give people the good news that you just shared with me? And this is again the attitude of the believer. You hear something good, you go and share that. Unfortunately, most people do the opposite. They hear something bad, they tell the world. They hear something good, they keep it to themselves. Opposite attitude. قال لا إني أخاف أن يتكلوا عليها. The Messenger of God told him, no, do not inform people of what I just told you, because I worry that they will depend on this statement and not really act according to what is expected of them. Now Mu'adh was extremely happy that the Prophet gave him this exclusive honor of sharing this piece of information with him. And what he did was, he applied the command. He made sure that he was very happy. He rejoiced by it, and he did not inform anyone about this. The messenger dies later on, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Mu'adh, now when the Prophet passed away, Mu'adh happens to be in Yemen. And the Prophet actually had sent him on a delegation to teach the people of Yemen. We ask Allah to make it easy on the people of Yemen, to feed their hungry and to cure their sick, and to alleviate the problems that they're going through and that they're experiencing. Mu'adh was in Yemen by the instruction of the Prophet. He sent him because Yemen was one of those provinces that embraced Islam in peace. There was no type of military expeditions there. The people embraced Islam. They came to the Messenger of God and they said, we accept you. So he sent them some of the best of his students. He sent Ali ibn Abi Talib. he sent Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and he sent Mu'adh bin Jabal. Those are the top-notch scholars of the companions. He sent them to Yemen. And the people of Yemen, the Prophet has praised them in more than one occasion. He says, Atakum ahlul Yemen. He says, the people of Yemen have come to you. They are the most lenient of people in hearts. And they are the most wise of people. He says, Al-hikmatu yamaniya, wal-fiqhu yaman. He says, wisdom is from Yemen, and the understanding of the religion comes from Yemen. So now Mu'adh was in Yemen at the Prophet's, the last year of the Prophet's life. And after that, he gets commissioned to go to Sham, the Levant area, specifically Damascus and its surrounding areas. And we ask Allah to make it easy on the people in that part of the world, to help them and to grant those who are oppressed support from him. Now, why did he go up there? Because the Muslims at that time were actually engaged in pushing the teachings and the ministry of the Prophet out north. And this was a land that was ruled by the Byzantines at the time, the Eastern Roman Empire. And there was only a period of time that passed until he actually passes away. And he was on his deathbed at this time. He was affected by the plague. This was a great plague that affected the area in Jordan. And he says, I am so happy that I'm being afflicted by this. Now, this is very interesting. You don't seek out to get sick. You don't seek out to have a calamity. But the attitude of the believer is that God is not punishing me by me enduring this difficulty. Rather, God is purifying me. I'm getting rid of any negative things that I have. I'm getting rewarded by the things that I have been tested with. And hopefully I'll meet my Lord with the reward of a martyr. So those who die with what's called the plague or the ta'un, die the death of martyrs, and they get great reward with their Lord. So the sickness became very severe with him, and he realizes that he's dying. And he says, I want you guys to expose me to the direction of salah. I need to inform you guys and to teach you a teaching that I heard directly from the Messenger of God. And I have not informed you of this teaching, except that I was afraid that you would depend on it and basically become negligent of your duties. I didn't want you guys to be lazy. Then he gave them the good news that the Messenger of God had informed him of, and he told them the exact story that we just shared. How he was riding on the donkey with the Prophet ﷺ, and no one was with them, and no one heard their conversation. And then Mu'adh disliked that he is to meet his Lord while he did not disclose the information that the Prophet left with him. He wanted to ensure that any piece of knowledge that I have, I get to relay it to those who come after us. He was afraid of the liability. Now in Islam, if you know knowledge and you don't share it, you're actually liable. You're going to be held into account. Why didn't you share this with people? Just like when you have wealth, and after you give your own family and those that you're responsible for their due right, you will be asked, why didn't you share this with those who are less fortunate? Anything that we have been given, part of being grateful for it is to share it with those that are around. So then at the moment of his death, he wanted to make sure that he leaves this life with a clean slate, and he shares this piece of information with people. And what he shared, or who he shared it with, was again his closest circle. But now we have this narration to also rejoice and to have this glad tiding. So he says, the author says, let's pause for a moment and reflect over some of the lessons that could be extracted from this particular story. The first lesson is the creative method of teaching that the messenger employed. Getting people excited. Getting people looking forward to the information that you're about to share. Allowing the learner to participate in the learning process. Again, a lot of us, we've been programmed that learning simply means that one person dictates and everybody else regurgitates. We just speak and other people repeat. There is no type of critical thinking taking place. There's no type of conversation taking place. There's no type of experiment taking place. What we learn here is that information that the Prophet shared was not done in a classroom setting. That's the first thing we learn. They were out and about traveling. That's a huge opportunity to speak to people, to have conversations. Especially here where we're at, you spend hours on the road. Now, if you have family with you or friends, this is a time to engage them in positive conversation. He wanted to have them excited to receive this piece of information, and he allowed the time to be appropriate. He gave Mu'adh a proper time period where he felt in close proximity physically, spiritually, and emotionally to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now, what that means is that Mu'adh is going to think very closely about any type of information he's going to receive at this moment. Because you know, there was many people around the Prophet. Why did he select Mu'adh for this task? Why did he select him to ride with him on his ride? He could have just told him, meet me in that spot. You could just walk there. But this was all done with what? With intentionality. There was a plan behind this. Part of the issues behind this plan is that we get to learn this. He gave this piece of information to someone that he knew would record it, would understand it, would not abuse it, and would share it with others. So again, Mu'adh here is emotionally and mentally prepared to receive any information that the Prophet will share with him. And then he says, pay attention to how the Prophet called him by his name and by his father's name. Now, what we should learn as Muslims is that it's appropriate for us when we call people, we call them by their most beloved names to them. We should never give people nicknames that they dislike. We should call them by the names that are beloved to them. And definitely, we should honor the wishes of their parents who called them by certain names as well. So this is part of the etiquette of Islam. Now, although they were so close, he calls them as if he's at a distance. Now, when you call someone at a distance, they typically will respond to you with this response of labbaik. I hear you, and I'm coming to accept your invite or come to your service. And then he says, what do you think came about in Mu'adh's mind when the Prophet remained silent after the initial call? So he calls him to grab his attention, then he remains silent. He's like, I want you to wonder with me what is going through the brain and the mind of Mu'adh. And he does this 3 times. He calls him 3 times. One of the prophetic models is actually to repeat himself 3 times, to say the statement in a way which becomes very clear, that no one has any ambiguity about it. I notice this when we speak. People process information in different ways. I may say one thing here, and each one of you will get a different understanding of what I meant. In order for us to decrease the chances of misunderstandings, we should clarify our speech to the best of our ability. Now, the Prophet here is realizing and noticing that Mu'adh is also excited for the response. So now the mind is fully in tune. Sometimes, parents know this very well. You tell your child something, but they're preoccupied with something else. And they're like, uh-huh. So let's say, pick up the trash, put it in the trash can. Yes. 30 minutes later, the trash is still where you last saw it. What happened? The brain was preoccupied with something else. Did they hear you? Yes, they heard you. But they were not focused with you. So sometimes we get angry, but the reality is we didn't give them a chance to focus. They were doing something else. Sometimes it's an adult that's doing it. So your spouse talks to you and you're reading something, or you're on your phone and you're preoccupied. If you don't put that thing away, believe you me, you didn't understand what they just told you. It happens all the time. You say, yes. And you know, the nice thing is when they put you to the test, can you tell me what I just told you? And you feel terrible because you were not paying attention. You were preoccupied with something else. So here we realize that the Prophet is ensuring that Mu'adh has his undivided attention. And then the Prophet ﷺ asks this question, do you know what God's right is on his servants? Mu'adh, gives the response of a learner who's looking to gain knowledge. Again, not someone who's full of himself, who thinks that he already has all the answers. And that's another problem with learning. The scholars say that you will not learn if you're embarrassed to ask, and you will not learn if you're too arrogant to ask. Those two people will never learn. The arrogant one and the shy one. Shyness is not good in learning. Why didn't you ask the question? I'm too shy. What are you shy of? Shouldn't be shy when it comes to learning. Don't allow shyness to prevent you from learning. Don't allow shyness to prevent you from shining. Right? So then Mu'adh here is excited. He's humbling himself, and the Prophet's answer comes to him again when he is ready to comprehend it and to receive it. So now again he's telling us, focus on all these things that led up to the moment of teaching, because the learning moment is the statements, but everything that led up to it was an introduction. And this, by the way, is in all of our relationships. Sometimes I do give explicit examples of what I speak about because it's important. Sometimes you want to be intimate with your spouse, and you expect to turn on a button and for them to be intimate. But what they tell you in relationships is that intimacy starts in the moment that you wake up. By being kind, by saying nice words, by checking up on the day in the daytime when you are at work, by bringing a gift, by spending quality time, by giving people your undivided attention. Then when the moment does come, it's more meaningful. Same thing with learning. The whole experience of the student has to be pleasant. Just imagine the student walks in the morning and you make a mockery of them, and you make fun of the way they're dressed, or they get bullied by another student. It's a toxic learning environment that the student is not allowed to gain full knowledge in. Let's say they deal with racism, with bullying. Let's say they came late and somebody embarrassed them. All these things affect the way the person learns. The opposite is the prophetic model right here. He makes the student close to him. He calls him by his first name. He is silent and gives them a moment to reflect and to think. He asks him a question. Teaching is not only talking, it's asking people questions, seeing where people are at. What level are you on? Where are you going? What are you thinking at this moment? All of that now is getting the student excited to be focused and to concentrate. And that's why Mu'adh memorizes the story in all its details way later on in his life when he's on his deathbed. This is the only time we get the statement, by the way, because he kept it secret all the way until he dies. But he remembered it like what? Like photographic memory, because of the whole experience. Most pleasant experiences are remembered that way. And many people, by the way, forget negative experiences because they're so painful that they block them off. They say Allah, God Almighty, has created us with a mechanism that blocks off our traumatic experiences. Reason being, if you keep the traumatic experience in your mind, it will destroy you. Very important in how we deal with people. So now, he says, he memorizes it, he comprehends it, he lives his whole life, and he still can hear the ring of the Prophet's voice in his ear. And although he was on his deathbed, dying of the plague. Just imagine, I mean, you hear about people dying all the time. It's not usually easy all the time. Some people die in their sleep, yes. But if you're struggling with a terminal illness, there's a lot of pain in the end of your life. That pain did not prevent him from remembering this positive memory. And he gives it in all its different details as if it's an event that happened 5 minutes ago. It's easy for us to say, well, 5 minutes ago, this is what happened. He's talking about things that happened years back. So now he concludes this particular lesson and he says, Salawatullahi wa salamuhu wa barakatuhu ala khayri muallimin linnas al-khayr. So this is what our attitude should be when we read about this beautiful teaching method of the Prophet. We should ask Allah to bless him, to honor and compliment him, to shower him with protection and grace, because he is the best of all people who taught people good. The second lesson says Mu'adh was a young person. He wasn't even 20 years of age in this particular event. Somewhere around 20. But the Messenger of God chose him to give him this specific exclusive knowledge. And he did not permit him, he didn't give him the license to share this for one reason. He realizes Mu'adh understands the meaning. So sometimes you may share information with someone and not someone else. That's called age appropriate. That's called maturity appropriate. That's called knowledge appropriate. So when a professor is speaking to graduate students, he's going to speak with some lingo. When he speaks to brand new students, freshmen, he's going to speak some lingo. He goes to a little children's school, he's going to speak in a different way. It would not be appropriate for him to share very big information because it's confusing. So the messenger of God here realizes Mu'adh understands and comprehends. I'm going to share this information with him. And I expect him to share it with others, but I'm going to give him the instruction, don't share it except with those who can comprehend it. And this teaches us, so the lesson we can extract here is give every student and every learner that which is appropriate for them. What's appropriate to their level, to their age, and to their needs. Sometimes people don't need you to tell them everything. And I usually give this example because I deal with people who come to Islam. And I deal with younger people. It's not good for you to tell somebody all of the teachings of Islam as soon as they enter into the door of Islam. Yes, I understand you're so smart. But you've been Muslim for 20 years plus as an adult. This person just came in. Please don't do that. That's called doing damage. This is like giving a brand new baby a full course meal. What do you think is going to happen to that child? I'll tell you. They're going to have a funeral very soon. You say, but I'm only teaching them Islam. I'm quoting to them the scripture and the Quran. Okay. What do you think of honey? You say honey is something good. What does Allah say about honey in the Quran? فِيهِ شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ. Honey has remedy and cure for humanity. Okay. Have you purchased a honey item from the store? You look at the fine print and they say what on it? Do not, warning, do not give to infants 1 year of age and under. If you do, what will happen? They will die. Although it's shifa'un linnas. But not every, because just like medicine. Medicine is what? It cures the one who needs it. You got high blood pressure. Good. I just heard this. This is a very tragic story. A little girl came visiting her family, and the older in the house, the older person in the house had medication for high blood pressure. And the child, maybe 2 years of age, went and swallowed that medicine. They rushed her to the emergency room. Now, high blood pressure medicine for that older person is good or bad? It's good. He's got that problem. But this child, they said, if you did not bring her here, she would have died. Because what would happen? Blood pressure medicine does what? Brings your blood pressure down. And that's extremely dangerous for that child in that age group. So the point is, sharing information which is age appropriate, knowledge level appropriate, requires great wisdom. So not everyone who has information should share it. So this now takes us back to earlier. I said the believer's attitude when they have good information, they share it with others with wisdom is a caveat. Just because you know something doesn't mean you need to open your mouth. That's why teaching requires credentials. And many people unfortunately do a lot of damage while sharing good information because the person on the receiving end is not ready for it. Or they don't understand it properly. Or you didn't teach it in the proper way. The third lesson that we can extract is Mu'adh, this man that the Prophet gave this special address to, he was known actually to be extremely rigid on himself when it came to acts of devotion and worship. It says when he used to perform the ritual worship, salah, he would read so long. And we're going to have a lesson about that. Even when he would lead people sometimes, until the Prophet reprimanded him for that. The messenger actually had to tell him, don't take too long in salah if you are leading people in salah. Now, if you're all by yourself, take your sweet time. But other people, the messenger teaches them a lesson. We're going to have that in another class. When the messenger of God passed away, Mu'adh travels to Sham seeking martyrdom because the Muslims were engaged in battle in the borders and in the vicinity of the Romans. He asked, Umar actually asked Abu Bakr, he says, can you please keep Mu'adh back? We need him here in the city. We need him to teach people here. So then Abu Bakr told Umar, I can't keep him here. I can't keep him hostage. He wants to be martyred. He wants to go and fight and die for the sake of God. This individual, when the time of death came to him, he says the following: Allahumma innaka kunta ta'lamu anni lam akun uhibbu al-baqa'a fi ad-dunya لجري الأنهار ولا لغرس الأشجار ولكن لظمأ الهواجر ومكابدة الليل ومزاحمة العلماء على الركب عند حلق الذكر. This is what he used to say. He says, oh my Lord, you know for sure that I don't wish to remain in this life because of the beauty of rivers or to plant trees and to be a farmer. Rather, the reason why I love to be alive is because of the times where I'm thirsty in the middle of the day due to fasting, and standing up in vigil during the night in prayer, and competing with the scholars by sitting on my knees in the circles of knowledge, the circles of remembrance. So this tells us that Mu'adh, although he heard this message, he didn't understand that I need to take a break. What he understood is I need to be extra vigilant. I need to be extra serious. He didn't understand, take it easy. Retire when you get older. You don't have to worship God anymore. You've done a lot for the community. You hear a lot of people say this stuff. I served my time. I paid my dues. You pay your dues until you die. That's how it works in Islam. وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Serve your Lord until death overtakes you. It's a lifetime of service and a lifetime of devotion. So Mu'adh only understood that he needs to increase in his devotion, that he should taste the sweetness of obedience, and that vigil and staying up at night and competing to receive good deeds is the understanding of this particular narration. He was pure, he was intelligent, and he was protected by virtue of his knowledge that he did not get the wrong understanding of this particular prophetic statement. He didn't believe that this is a reason for him to take it easy. That's very important, by the way. Many people quote the Prophet, but it's called a misquote. They misquote the Prophet. So people quote this hadith, and that's the importance of understanding who is the narrator of the hadith. That's why we mentioned the whole story in context. Because people mention this hadith and they're like, look man, I said la ilaha illallah, I believe in it, that's it. I don't have to do anything else. Okay, let's see Mu'adh, the one who heard it directly from the messenger of God, who comprehended it. What did he do to apply this particular teaching? Did he quit and he say, I've already said it and I say it truthfully and I'm good to go? He never did that. So the proper understanding of the narrations is to get him in the proper context. The fourth lesson, it says this is an indication to the great understanding of Mu'adh, may Allah be pleased with him, that when he receives a prophetic teaching and he received a prohibition by the Prophet censored him and told him, do not inform others of this. And he sought permission from the Prophet to inform people. So look at how many things we have here. He asked the Prophet for permission. The Prophet told him, do not do so. Rather, at the moment of his death though, because of his understanding and his knowledge, he did not want to be liable and to be sinful, that he kept one of the statements of the Prophet hidden. This is called proper understanding. He understood from the Prophet's statement that I need you to share this with the people who truly will understand it. So he only shared it with whom? The ones who were at his deathbed, who had spent a lifetime learning with him. He had trained them properly, and he shared it with them with the same condition. Don't tell people this if they're not aware of what is required of them. Don't tell people this lest they become lazy. So there was a reason why the Prophet prohibited him from sharing it, which is for people to become negligent of their responsibilities. So he taught his closest students, and they understood from him and they learned from him, and they narrated on his authority. The point behind this is that this becomes now a teaching amongst the learned in our community. Mu'adh did not mention it and share it in the public. So that's why it's important, again, when we say a hadith, make sure that you explain it. Don't just drop words and leave. It can cause a lot of problematic understanding. So he chose and selected who he's going to inform with this particular narration. Now, a lot of people may think, well, Mu'adh is actually guilty here of breaking the Prophet's command because the Prophet prohibited him from sharing it. However, the knowledge of Mu'adh tells us that I am going to be liable if I don't share the teaching of the Prophet of God. And he properly understood what was the cause for the prohibition. The cause of the prohibition is something very important. So it basically is to protect people from being negligent and not to be responsible with the information that they are given. But if you give it to the right people, then by all means. As long as, again, so I'm going to make a deal with you guys. Don't use this narration to be negligent. And don't share it with others, except if you share the whole story and you share what Mu'adh did in order to implement this teaching. The fifth lesson says, isn't it amazing for you the condition of Mu'adh while he is at his deathbed, he's losing his life and he's dealing with the pain of death, but he does not leave his occupation, which he received directly from the Prophet ﷺ, which is to be a teacher, which is sharing the message with others, informing them. Ad-da'watu wat-ta'lim. This is the task of the Prophet. The Prophet came with these two things: sharing the message of people and educating people, teaching people. Likewise, that's what Mu'adh has. So Mu'adh here was a caller, and he was calling as if he's completely healthy. He was calling during his health, and he was calling to God during his sickness and while he was dying. Mu'adh here could have given an excuse, and that's a valid excuse, by the way. When you're sick, you have sick leave. I'm a teacher. If I fall sick, I call in and I tell him, I'm sorry, I can't make it today. That's fine. But here he didn't even give himself that opportunity. He says, I'm not going to waste an opportunity. I'm going to share the message of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, although he had a valid excuse. And again, sickness is a valid excuse according to Islam. The sixth lesson and the final lesson, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again, we go back to where we started, traveling in the marketplace on the donkey's back. And he has one of the people of Medina sharing his mode of transport with him. This teaches us how humble of a servant of God he was. So it says, this shows us mashahidul ubudiyyati wa tawadhu'un nabawi. It shows us the humbleness of the Prophet and the servitude that he had, the proper attitude that he had, which makes him so distant from arrogant people, from tyrants who come, as we said before, they come with an entourage. He didn't have an entourage. Who come with security guards, who come and when they rent a hotel, they rent the whole hotel because they're afraid that somebody's going to mess with them. They hire security. They hire special, what are they called? Secret service? Is that what's called? Secret service, right? You don't even know that they're armed because they're afraid of something. The Prophet was not afraid of anything. He walked amongst the people and he was completely safe. By what? By virtue of his trust in God. Again, I'm not saying for us to be reckless. We are not the Prophet of God, right? It's good if you need security, get yourself some security. I'm not going to go fight you over that. But the point here is to compare and contrast between the people of this life who want materialism and the Messenger of God who did not want anything of this life. Do you think he could have had a horse if he wanted a horse? He could have. But he was satisfied with humble property. He was satisfied with humble dwelling. He was satisfied with humble mode of transport. The Prophet ﷺ chose to be a prophet and a servant of God, and he did not choose to be a king and a prophet of God, although he was given the choice. Were there kings who were also prophets? Who? King David. Who else? Solomon, someone says, right? Solomon and David, the father and son, they were both kings of Israel and prophets of Israel. That's a fact. The Prophet Muhammad was given that choice. Do you want to be a prophet and a king? He chose what? To be a servant and a king. To be humble. One time a man comes to him and the man was shivering. Like he was in awe of the Prophet. He says, chill, sit down. I'm only a human being and I eat meat jerky. Meaning I eat the food of the people. I'm not somebody beyond human. I'm a servant of God. And he eased that guy's fear and he comforted him and he told him, sit down. He says, I was born to a woman of the Quraysh. Meaning, I am not anything spectacular, although he was spectacular, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But again, reminding people and comforting them and bringing them close to himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And with that, we conclude with this particular narration, which is talking about Mu'adh. Hopefully next week, I think I'm going to share the other story that we hinted to since we are on a roll, talking about Mu'adh ibn Jabal. May Allah be pleased with Mu'adh ibn Jabal. May Allah reward him for sharing the knowledge that was given to him by the Messenger of God. May we understand this teaching the way he understood it. May we be responsible with the knowledge that we learn, share it properly, share it with those who can understand it, and make sure that if people can't understand it properly, to withhold that information from them until the time is right. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. We complete and conclude this meeting by asking God Almighty to bless the Messenger Muhammad, to honor and compliment him, to shower him with protection and grace along with his family and his righteous followers, as he did with Ibrahim, his family and righteous followers in the past. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. We ask, O Allah, to give us the best of this life and the best of the next life, and to protect us from the fire. اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل ونعوذ بك من سخطك ومن النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. We ask you, Allah, for your pleasure and for paradise and for everything that will bring us close to it of actions and statements. And we seek your protection and your refuge from the fire and your anger and anything that will drive us towards it of statements and actions. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه ولا تجعله ملتبسا علينا فنضل. We ask you, Allah, to show us this truth as truth and to guide us to follow it. Show us falsehood as falsehood and to keep us away from it. And don't make things ambiguous for us that we will be led astray. We ask you to guide us to learn from our beloved Messenger and to carry his teachings into our daily lives and to constantly be in a state of living true to his teachings, sharing the teachings of good news with others, and loving for others what we love for ourselves. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of everything in existence. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.